What is going on, Guardians? Ember here with another one for you. So the first couple of weeks of Grandmaster Nightfalls have come out, and let me guess, you're like me, you've been grinding so many other things in Destiny that your power level is the last thing that has crossed your mind. But don't worry, Guardians, the Peregrine Greaves build is still a hitter, and on Prismatic, it is better than ever, and I'll show you why. Let's go ahead, before we get into it, head down below this video, absolutely obliterate the like and subscribe button. Go ahead in the comment section below, roast my Guardians drip, and I will post my favorite response in the beginning of my next video. And without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so in our character screen here, we have Peregrine Greaves. Obviously, we're using this because we are going to be smashing up every single champion or mini boss that we see in any of these Grandmasters here, and it's going to refund our melee ability, which is key because we're going to be doing this a whole lot over and over. For our barrier champions, we're going with our blast furnace here. It's a pulse rifle, so we have anti-barrier pulse rifle on. We're using an indebted kindness with volt shot. This is going to help us deal with overload champions in a pinch, and then we're running microcosm because it deals chunky damage all the time, always. Going into our subclass here, we're using Glacial Quake for any amount of enemies that we see that are just overwhelming. They're huge enemies in front of us. This is a great panic super that you can just lay down a huge wall of ice, protect your friends behind you, and deal with all those enemies. We're using the Hammer Strike ability for our shoulder charge. The Suppressor Grenade, our aspects are Knockout and Diamond Lance, and then our fragments are Courage, Purpose, Ruin, Blessing, and Dominance. Going into our artifact here, we want to make sure that we have Shield Crush, Transference, and Radiant Orbs. And then as far as our mod screen goes, this is about what it looks like here right now. If you're doing the Warden of Nothing Grandmaster Strike, I would recommend these solar damage resistance on your chest piece, because not only does that servitor have the massive solar sunblast, but you're going to be dealing with the Incinerator Unstoppable champions and the Barrier Hobgoblins, and they can be kind of a tough sell when you're trying to get through those. So with all that out of the way, let's head into some of that gameplay and break down how each of these pieces work together.
Yesterday, you said tomorrow, so just do it!
Alright, before we start breaking down our aspects and our fragments like usual, I want to have a little disclaimer here. We are going to be talking about a lot of buffs that we're going to be stacking together to get huge damage numbers on all these champions. In a Grandmaster like this, you are not going to be able to get every single one of these buffs stacked at once, and you should not expect to. What we're trying to do here is to get 1, 2, maybe even 3 of these buffs together so that we can nearly one-hit some of these champions, depending on if we can actually stun an unstoppable champion like we're doing here. But what we're really trying to do is just get a couple of buffs together. Big ones like Knockout, like Weaken, and like Radiant. Those are going to be our real heavy hitters. So having said that, let's start breaking down our aspects. Number 1, and the bread and butter of this build, is going to be Knockout. This states breaking shields or critically wounding combatants makes your melee damage deal increased numbers. So we're going to be beefing up our shoulder charge by a huge percent every time we proc Knockout. All we have to do is get somebody low or break their shield. We're going to be breaking a lot of barrier champion shields, and that's a great way to get that one going. Next is our Diamond Lance, and we're doing Diamond Lance because it's a really easy way to get our darkness debuffs going on an enemy, and that's going to have us deal extra damage thanks to one of our fragments that we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's a really easy way to get a whole bunch of Diamond Lances all over the field. You can throw them at those champions, and oftentimes if you freeze a champion with a Diamond Lance, by the time you get around to do the shoulder charge on them, you're going to hit them and you're going to generate another Diamond Lance. As far as our fragments go, we're using the facet of Courage first, making our light abilities deal more damage to darkness affected targets. And that's exactly what I was talking about feeding into the Diamond Lance. When we hit something with a Diamond Lance, we're going to be debuffing them.
Will you cut that out?
For our shoulder charge, and since we're using the hammer strike for solar, essentially, that one is going to pair very nicely with this since it is a light-based melee. Next is Facet of Purpose. Picking up an orb grants frost armor, and that is really strong for us. We're going to want to keep as much survivability going on this build as possible. After that is Facet of Ruin. Shatter damage is increased, and solar ignitions have a larger damaging radius. And that's great since when we have our hammer strike going, when we do get a kill on a champion, pretty much always it's going to ignite that champion, and so it'll kill a lot of enemies just chilling around them. So you can really go in and get a champion that's kind of in the middle of a bunch of enemies and come out on top. Next up is the Facet of Blessing. Melee final blows grant health regen, and when you're transcendent, it's going to give that regen to your entire team. This is obviously great and pairs very well with this build because we want to make sure that we can keep our health up as much as possible, especially when you're kind of running low recovery like I am. And last up, Facet of Dominance. Void grenades weaken your target. Since we're running the suppressor grenade here, that's really strong to give us a big damage debuff on those champions. Like I said, if you can proc knockout and then hit them with one of those grenades, you're basically gonna kill them even at 35 under where I am currently. It's very strong. It's absurd almost. And as far as our artifact goes, we want Shield Crush for more melee damage in general, Transference for more melee damage while transcendent, and Radiant Orbs so that every time we pick up an orb, we can get that damage buff. And finally, our armor mods. These are actually pretty important on this build since we're getting our melee back for free every single time we use it. We want to get as many suppressor grenades as possible. So we're going to be using things like Grenade Kickstart. We're going to be using Charged Up and Stacks on Stacks. We're going to be using Powerful Attraction. Those three together, when you pop your Barricade, it's going to pull all the orbs around you so you don't have to go pick them up. If they're in somewhere where you might get killed just for running in to pick up an orb, you don't have to deal with that anymore. And then we also want to grab Better Already, since, like I said, we're running a little bit low recovery, and number one, in a Grandmaster like this, you're getting hit from all sides. Your health is not going to really have a great chance to get regen, even if you are at power. So it's a really great way to just keep yourself alive. And quickly covering Transcendence, not only will that give you your melee back if you somehow hit an enemy that you didn't mean to and lose it, but if you're out of your grenade charge, or if you are dealing with an unstoppable or overload champion, that grenade, that Transcendence grenade for Titan, will stun them. So you can actually stun all three champion types. This is truly just a super strong build. Use it, let me know how you feel about it. That's gonna have to be all for me for now, Guardians. Until next time, be without form, swift as lightning.